All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick off this meeting so we can get started and give everyone time to present because we have a packed agenda today. So welcome everyone again. If this is your first time joining this call, or if you're a regular attendee, I think this is now the fourth call for the Azure Adaptive Cloud Community Call. My name is Kiana, and I have Thomas here and also Lior, and we'll be your hosts for this call today. Let me flip to the next slide. And like I said, if this is your first time joining this call, welcome. This call, I do this every call just to kind of go over an overview and make sure that everyone's on the same page. But this call is focused on the Azure Adaptive Cloud Community Call for products and service updates. So topics presented anywhere range from anywhere from like Azure Arc, Azure Stack HCI, Azure IoT, AKS. Presenters today will go over their topics and we'll engage in a Q&A session at the end where we open up the floor for all of you to ask any questions. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to drop them in the chat. We have a Q&A button to the left of the people button in Teams. Feel free to ask your questions there and we can take them offline also. But like I said, we do have a Q&A session at the end. We love to open the floor up to everyone to discuss any topics that they want to bring up, whether that's for the presenters specifically or anything in general. So flipping to the next slide here, this is our GitHub. So this is a public repository. All of you should be able to go and access this now if you would like. There we have our meeting links and recordings. So if you haven't been able to attend our previous calls, but you're interested in learning more about some of our previous calls, we have recordings there. Same with the meeting link for this call and future calls. And then we just have regular Adaptive Cloud resources as well. To the next slide here. So this is the Adaptive Cloud Community YouTube. So speaking about the recordings, we have our recordings also available on YouTube. So this call is recorded and is non-NDA. And if you have friends or colleagues that were interested in attending today but somehow couldn't make it, no worries. You can catch up on our YouTube page. Everything from our previous calls has been posted. They're typically posted the day of or the day after. So either later today or later sometime tomorrow is when this call will be posted on YouTube. And then we have some great topics today. We have a rather full agenda. So without further ado, I can hand it off to Francisco for our Jumpstart updates.
Thank you. Can you see? Yep. Can you go to the next one?
Yep. And Francisco, I think you should be able to take control. I'm not totally sure.
Okay. Cool. Well, so good afternoon, good morning to everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Francisco Gabriel. I'm a senior technical program manager here at the Azure Jumpstart team. And so today I'll be talking a bit about the updates that we've been doing in the past couple months. So let's start with the main release notes. So because we didn't that in the last call, so there was some kind of a major updates when it comes to security improvements. So we're working really hard to make sure that we're trying to remove all the authentication using username and password. So we're trying to use more managed identities for all our authentication. So that's a really good approach, right? In terms of security, we're also removing all our SaaS tokens when it comes to VHD downloads, and we're going to keep working on that so that you get those VHDs in a faster way and more secure way. When it comes to HCI box, we also fixed some issues regarding the bootstrapping, right? And there was some missing parameters and some kind of pre-provisioning fixes. And then when it comes to Arc-enabled servers, there was an issue with the connectivity behind proxy. We also fixed that. Then we also have the June release notes, also packed with critical bug fixes and more features. And there, for example, we fixed for HCI box, there was an issue with the high MTU that was causing, kind of a low, let's say, bandwidth on Windows Server. We also fixed some issues regarding the creation of resource groups. And when it comes to Arc-enabled data services, we also kind of use the latest release from this service. And then finally, also in the release of June, we have the new APD, the Arc architecture posters and diagrams. So there's a the new bundle is already published. So there we have a new kind of poster for the Azure Arc Site Manager, for the which will go over a kind of the overview of the public preview. we have a new diagram regarding, Azure Arc Resource Bridge, so ARB. And we have one new around the SQL Server enabled by Azure Arc. So just remember, all this is public. You can just go ahead into our Azure Arc Jumpstart website. There if you go into, you'll see on the top right bar, you have the release notes. And if you go into assets, you're gonna find a link specifically to download all the content, to download all these diagrams. And we're sharing these, right, of course, as a PPT, that you can go ahead and use it directly, or you just can get, the PDF to share. And then we have some exciting news around Jumpstart drops. So in the last month, we had 3 new drops. So there's one, which is pretty cool, right, on how to do a certificate-based onboarding for Azure Arc enabled servers. Again, we're trying to go away from the use of passwords. So this is a great approach, right? Using certificates. There's one other drop around Azure IoT Operations, AIO, and how to test that using GitHub code spaces. So there you'll get all the kind of bash scripts in order to run that code space, and also then get all the automation on how to get AIO installed. And then finally, it's a drop around Edge Storage Accelerator, which is a new kind of public preview service that we have for Kubernetes kind of clusters, and how to use like storage on this Kubernetes cluster, and how to sync that storage directly from the edge to the cloud. So really cool drops. You can just go ahead and check our Jumpstart drops page and see all the content there. We do have some more upcoming drops. So we're working right now to actually migrate a bit of some scenarios into drops, which will mean we're going to be updating that content and making sure that we're keeping with the latest and greatest. And we do have some also upcoming drops regarding RAGs and LLMs and AI. So stay tuned, go into our Jumpstart drops page, and you'll see kind of all the latest content. And finally, regarding drops, if you actually go right now into the Jumpstart drops page, you're gonna see that it's a public preview notice, right? So we're working really hard to finish all the content, to finish the searching, the filtering, the rendering, in order to get to GA. And as part of that, right, we what we drops in an easy way. So the idea is that if you have any content out there, right, and you want to create a drop, right, it should be really simple to you to actually submit that content and create a drop based on the bits, the code that you have. So you will go into the Jumpstart drops page. You're gonna go and fill this kind of form, which is pretty cool because you get like live what is the status of that drop. You can actually see how that drop is gonna look like. And once you actually and I think you need to move to the next slide. Yep. And then, so this is just an example, right, of how you can actually go ahead and fill the form, get that live view. And then if you go to the next slide, Kiana, you'll see, right, like what you can continue doing, risk, how you can actually write the documentation of the drop based, right, based on your content, and doing it directly through here. So there's no need for GitHub. There's no need for any other technology. You do everything directly through this wizard, and we will automate all the process with all the checks and making sure that we create the appropriate GitHub pull request, and we'll review it and then finally merge it, right, so that it's public, it's public through to all the visitors to our page. With that, I think that's kind of it. We'll leave after for questions, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, Francisco. Megan, I don't know. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, awesome. So, yep, I think I'm up next then, that with Multicloud. And so my name is Megan McCrory. I'm a product manager on the Azure Arc team, and I've been focused on Multicloud for the last year and a half. And we're really excited to be talking to you today just about some new multi-cloud capabilities. And so whenever we've been talking to a lot of our multi-cloud customers, one thing that they were mentioning is that even being able to sort of understand what they have deployed in all of the different public clouds is sometimes hard to get. And so one thing that we really wanted to focus on our side is there a way that we can really easily create a lightweight connection to other public clouds where we can actually see everything inside of your environment, project that inside of Azure with all of your source cloud metadata to give you a single source for inventory. And so this will actually provide a really rich experience for customers who have environments out in AWS, which we're in public preview right now, but we'll look to expand to other clouds in the future. But a really rich experience so you can actually see your hybrid Azure and AWS information all in a single way through the Azure portal. And so with this, of course, as well, we want to give the experience to make it really easy for customers to ARC enable the eligible resource types that can be ARC enabled. So right now for EC2 instances that you might have running on AWS, if you want to easily ARC enable them, you can do so through this connector. But I'm really excited to kind of showcase what this looks like inside of a demo. So let me actually switch over to the Azure portal here. And so this is basically the homepage. And so I'm going to click on Azure Arc. And here under Azure Arc, you can see under this management tab, there's something new here called the Multicloud Connector. So this is something that we just launched a couple weeks ago. And if you click on this, you'll actually be able to see all of the connectors that I have created. But I'm going to go ahead and walk through the create experience so you can kind of see what this is like real time. And so right now, here I am on side of the create page. And so the connector is an ARM resource. So we have to give it a resource group. So I'm just going to call this demo 2. And then I'm going to call my connector demo 2 here. And then we should be good to go. And next up is the AWS account details. So this is the connector basically holds the AWS account information of where we should connect. And so today we support both the single account and organizational account. So on the AWS side, if you have an organizational account with multiple children accounts, you could onboard your org account, and then all of the children account associated to that organizational account would be discovered through this connector service. But for this demo, I'm just going to do a single account here. And so I'm already logged in the AWS portal. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my account ID. And then I'm going to paste that here inside of the text box and click next. And then next up is really the solutions. And so this is sort of the meat of the product. And as I mentioned, the first solution that we have is inventory. Once again, this is basically a read-only version of your resources that exist in AWS projected in Azure. So now you have a single source of truth that you can trust when it comes to making sure you can see all of the different resources that you have deployed. And so right now you can see if I wanted to add this, I can choose the AWS services that I'm interested in. You'll notice that there's 26 services on this list, and we do expect this to grow over time. When we think about inventory, we really want to make sure that we're supporting everything. So we've done a lot of work to sort of automate this process to make sure that we can really keep up with all of the changes that are happening on the AWS side of the house. And so you'll notice I've got Dynamo databases, I've got GuardDuty, Lambda, Lightsail, EC2, but I'm going to go ahead and keep this list the same. And then next up is the periodic sync. And so this is once again to make sure that we're keeping up to date with your environment in AWS. We want to make sure that this is turned on and set. And so right now, these are kind of the intervals that you can choose from. And by default, it's every hour. So basically every hour, our service will sync to your AWS environment and then read everything and then make sure it's consistent with what we have on the Azure side. And we will make changes if we need to. And then the next resource filter is the region. So if you wanted to, for instance, exclude a region for a certain reason, you can do so here. And then we're going to hit save. Next up is the ARC onboarding. And so in addition to sort of this read-only view, if you want to actually use the connector to ARC enable your EC2 instances at scale, you can do so through this easy connectivity method. So here you can choose how you want to connect, and then you can actually choose, once again, your periodic sync schedule. And so if you want to sync every hour to make sure if any new EC2 machines were spun up, they get captured here. So it always stays up to date. And then we have our resource filters. So once again, we have the regions here if you want to filter for specific regions that we should scan. And we have this AWS tags filter. And so in public preview, we do really want to make sure that we are Arc enabling the machines that you want us to. And so we're actually making sure that on your AWS side, you have to add an AWS tag with the key as Arc in order for us to really pick up this machine. This is something that we're doing in public preview just to make sure as an extra gate that we're okay to install the Arc agent. But in the future, this will be user defined. So you could actually add your own tags here as to what you want to filter in and out. And then after that, we're good to go. So I've onboarded, I've selected my solutions, and now it's the authentication template. So you might be wondering, how exactly do you connect to my AWS account? And this is really through the AWS CloudFormation template. And so this template basically contains the identity provider for our first-party app to federate with your AWS account. And so through this, you can actually download this AWS template. You can open up the AWS CloudFormation stacks, and then you can go through the process of actually creating a new stack with this uploaded template file to give our first-party app the permissions it needs to really be able to access your account information. And so in the case of inventory, it's the read-only access that we need. And then in the case of Arc onboarding, we need EC2 write access. So all of that is defined here inside of that authentication template. Just for the sake of time, though, I'm not going to go through the full AWS onboarding, but we'll just kind of finish up this review and create. And so after, you could add tags if you wanted to, and then you could come and create your connector. So if I hit this create button, the deployment has gone through. We can actually see that things have been working. I can see my multi-cloud connector. I can see my 2 solutions. And if I even click on my connector here, you'll actually notice that my status is pending. And that's because I haven't finished the step on the AWS side to truly authenticate. But while that is going on, let's actually take a look at a connector that is already there. So if I come over to my multi-cloud connectors, I'm now going to come over to my subscription. And then I'm going to go ahead and select a connector. So this connector is already fully set up. I've already got the authentication there. You can see that the last sync happened about 30 minutes ago. And so now if I actually come over here, I can see my resources. So this will actually show me all of the resources that I have by the type. And so you'll notice I've got some CloudFormation stacks, some EC2 instances. If I come over to the next page, I even have like an S3 bucket here. If we drill into one of these, you can see all of the source cloud metadata that's coming from AWS. And really that's that kind of secret sauce where we're really getting all of the information from the AWS APIs and like a get storage bucket call and returning that inside of a schema inside of AWS under this new resource provider type called Microsoft.AWS connector/S3 bucket. So once again, this provides you a really rich querying experience. So now you can actually say, I want to see all of my storage buckets across Azure and AWS and when they were last modified as an example. And so this is really nice, and it stays up to date with your source cloud by making sure that we have that periodic sync happening. One other quick example that we want to take a look at, though, is an EC2 instance. So if I click on this one, you'll notice here I've got all of the EC2 metadata here. So I can see, for instance, all of the instance ID. I can see what the AMI is being used to create this instance. I can see the platform details. I have the IP addresses. So it gives you a really rich experience. But then what's also really nice is that for this one, you'll notice if I actually copy this instance ID, and if I come back over to Azure Arc on the machines view, and if I search for this instance ID, we actually are creating Arc servers for this because it needs to be Arc enabled. And so here we can actually see that this is connected to Azure Arc, and I can come through and I can make sure that I'm connected to update management. I can make sure I'm being monitored, have change tracking and inventory. So it's a really easy way without me having to go and manually install the Arc agent on all of these EC2 machines. I can do so through my connector, and I can see the instance show up here in a single pane. So last but not least on the demo side, if we actually browse to the Resource Graph Explorer, this is the rich way that we can actually write KQL queries to query our environments. And so if I open up a query here, and if I just do show me maybe all Azure and AWS machines, What this will actually do is now I can see that if I sort by cloud here, I can actually see I've got a lot of AWS machines. I can see their ID, their size, what this running state is. And if I come down, I can actually start seeing here's some Azure machines. So once again, it gives you this kind of nice ability to see the AWS side and the Azure side. And then one last example that we'll showcase is the functions. So like if I wanted to see all of my AWS functions and my Azure functions, I can do so here again by running these queries. So I can actually see here's my functions inside of AWS. Here's when they were last modified. Here's my AWS location. Here's my Azure location. Here's my AWS tags, and here's my Azure tags. So it's nice to have a single way now that I can just cross cloud query. So that was a quick demo. Sorry for running through this kind of quick. I know we've got a packed agenda, so just wanted to cover that. And then next up here, we did also want to showcase just this quick solutions diagram. So thanks to the Jumpstart team, we're working on this, but we basically have the way that we actually connect through, once again, that CloudFormation stack where we're connecting to the AWS APIs. And we're seeing all of these resource types coming through. And then what happens with the periodic sync, that gets written back over to all of the different resource providers. So the hybrid connectivity where the connector lives, the AWS connector resource provider where all of my resources are stored, and then the hybrid compute resource provider for that Arc-enabled server where that gets updated. And then that gives you that really rich ARG querying experience for customers to now go and use. So this is something that we're really excited about. We just launched once again into public preview. And so as we looked into the demo, we have a lot of different features that you can add onto, but I will share inside that chat window, our docs link and the questions and feedback link, just in case if I will be really interested if you've got any feedback for us, or if you want to try it out and want help from the product team, we would be more than willing to kind of walk you through the experience. But we are excited to be a part of this, and a part of multi-cloud is obviously a big part of the adaptive cloud strategy. So we're excited about these new capabilities. And of course, if there's any questions, feel free to leverage the chat and I will drop in these links right now. Thanks, Kiana.
Awesome. Thanks, Megan.
Hey everyone, I think I'm I'm next.
Yep, let me bring the slides back up super quick here.
Sure.
Wonder if it's going to make me flip through. Ah, it's going to make me flip through all the slides, huh? Give me 1 second. Is there a better way to navigate these? I don't think so. It's not that helpful.
By the way, it says chat is only
There we
available to members of the team, just FYI.
Ah, good to know. Is the Q&A section, just out of curiosity, is that open? Are you able to ask questions through there?
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's something we'll have to look at here in the back end. But okay, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Sadiq then.
Awesome. You could probably switch to the next slide if you want, by the way. Just
Perfect.
helps, yeah. So hey everyone, as Kiana mentioned, my name is Sadiq Jaman, and I work on the Adaptive Cloud Developer Experience team. A part of my charter involves working on ISV and OSS enablement, which is partner application validation for the Azure Arc-enabled Kubernetes platform. We recently kickstarted this effort, and I wanted to share a really quick update with you all today. So first question we may all have is, why are we doing this? And so as part of the Adaptive Cloud Developer Experience team, we try our best to provide a complete set of tools and services to help developers and operations go quickly and safely from idea to code, and then also from, code to cloud. And I think, we just presented on our Multicloud Connector, which is also part of that. Another reason we are doing this is because edge developers are leveraging the open source community to build their enterprise applications. We want to provide them with a one-stop shop in the Azure marketplace where they have a customer choice of the Kubernetes based on building blocks needed to develop their applications. So what you see really on this slide is the narrative as, why are companies choosing Microsoft? Why are what we are looking for? So again, we're looking for OSS and ISV partners. Where the benefits are for the partners, which we'll discuss a little bit more, and then what are the requirements for the partners? Essentially, the validation process. Kiana, can you skip to the next slide, please? So our overall goal is to bring as many OSS partners and ISV partners to the marketplace as possible. By bringing Arc-enabled partners to the marketplace, it will allow us to offer more value and choice to our customers who want to deploy and manage Kubernetes applications or services across their hybrid cloud environments. This benefits both the partner and Microsoft. So the partner benefits is that they receive a wider customer outreach being publicly available on our marketplace, while we at Microsoft continue to guarantee that these services will work with Azure Arc on a variety of different Kubernetes distributions. Partners would have to perform the validation effort to ensure that they are compatible with the Arc extension framework and Azure Arc configuration. They would also have to follow the guidelines and processes for certification, publishing, and our billing process. In the end, they become available on the AKS marketplace where all of our customers can simply install the extension. Next slide. And so the major point of this update, besides just giving like a brief overview of what the program is that we actually have released our very first Azure Arc Marketplace offering. This program started recently, and so a pretty big step in order for us to release our first of many to come. We have validated other ISVs as well, so Isovalent being one of them, Intel being another, HashiCorp as well. And so we're looking to continually add more ISVs to our marketplace as well as our OSS partners. So in the upcoming months, I'll provide another update to showcase how our program has grown and kind of what we're looking for in other partners to add to our marketplace offering. I'll hand it over to the next person.
Awesome. Hey, folks, wanted to provide some updates. And thank you. That was really, really interesting to learn about the ISV program as well. Just kind of moving along, I know there's a packed agenda on the Arc-enabled servers front. So these are our standard updates. We have an agent release for 1.43 that was released in June. There were quite a few fixes with this most recent agent release, which you likely noticed. There were some proxy private link configuration issues with the 1.42 version we noticed, so please update to the 1.43 version. We also have fixed for OpenSSL. For the Linux side, we added the server name indicator SNI to our service calls, and that fixed sort of the proxy and firewall scenarios that I mentioned were broken. Additionally, we are skipping lockdown policy on downloads directory for guest config. So those are some kind of smaller agent related updates and fixes that we had with the 1.43 agent version. Again, we highly recommend customers continue to onboard to the latest agent version. There's a lot of security and quality fixes associated with that. More on the actual feature and capability side, it's not just agent quality fixes we have. We have quite a few updates on extended security updates this time around. Specifically, we have the ESU usage view now in public preview. And so in Azure Portal, you're going to be able to log in and you're going to be actually able to see this, where across the fleet of all of your ESUs and your servers, you're going to see a summary of what licenses may be over or under provisioned, right? In terms of the number of cores versus licensing, you'll be able to see the coverage of which servers are actually licensed in which proportion and which ones are deactivated. And so this really provides a bird's eye view across the sort of ESU licensing for Windows Server. But as we're thinking about more licensing offers that are coming up through Azure Arc, similar to ESUs, we're going to replicate that and really focus on the license management ease piece. Please provide any feedback on that. The other quick notes we had were the ESU transition scenario, which you announced was coming soon, is now in preview. So now you're able to use our CLI or API in order to actually specify your volume licensing entitlements for year one. So if you're a customer that had volume licensing entitlements already for the first year of extended security updates, and you wanted to go to Arc for year two, you can make that transition by specifying your invoice number on creation of licenses. And we're bringing that experience to Portal as well in coming weeks to help customers with that one-year cliff that we're approaching in October of this year. And the final thing we wanted to note there was the intermediate certificate requirement that quite a few customers had some friction with. That's actually dropped. So please have the April SSU in Agent 1.40 version. We also want to note that multiple services, Azure Update Management, Change Tracking Inventory, and Machine Config are included at no additional cost for ESU customers. So please continue to use those as well, and consider that if cost was a consideration. I do see there's a question.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. The first one is when you starting to improve some information about the agent, for example, could be nice have the IP address, the RAM, the version of CPU, because could be also interesting in terms of maybe export the data into a CSV files to have a state of infrastructure. And the other question is when the upgrade status for the extension will be improved, because this is another big part of the ARC issue, because sometimes fails the upgrade and there's no way to restart automatically the upgrade of those, and we don't have the visibility because there's no email or a high view level to see what's going on with let me say, if you have 20, 30, 50, 100 server, you cannot check one by one to see if the agent are all, the extension are all updated or not.
Yeah, this is great feedback. Thank you for surfacing the Silvio. On the first one, we do have VM Insights. So Azure Monitor Agent as an extension on Arc Server with VM Insights actually offers CPU utilization, all of these metrics that you can collect, you can analyze through logging, make your custom reporting in KQL. In terms of the extension health, we do have additional extension health reporting, workbooks, etc., that are in progress, and CLI you can use as well. But I'd love to talk to you offline as well in more detail if there's additional feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Great. Well, that's a wrap in terms of updates with the Arc Server agent. You'll see what's new in the Connected Machine Agent, that resource, and that ESU blog as well that I put in under resources. That's going to have additional info. So I'm going to just drop that one into the chat as well. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Arnav. All right, Pete, are you ready for Azure IoT Operation Quickstart video series?
I am indeed. Hey,
Perfect.
folks. So, yeah, during this time, I think I had my hours all mixed up. You can blame time zones. No one can do time zones. They're hard. Yeah, so shall I share my screen? That's probably going to be the best idea here, isn't it?
Yes,
Let
absolutely.
me do that. Just one sec. Of course, Teams is being slow. It's its job right now. Asking it to do too much. Give me 1 second. While my machine is catching up, and so long as you can hear me correctly, what we've got is a brand new set of quick starts for IoT operations. And you can see that link for that on the screen at the moment. And this quick start allows us to be able to deploy Azure IoT operations in GitHub code spaces, which is pretty powerful, actually. In that normally you'd have to find yourself a compliant piece of hardware and get that all set up with an operating system and the relevant pieces of software, and then Arc enable that and connect that all up. Whereas this quick start relies on an already existing code space that you can spin up for yourself. I'm not sure why my Teams is being so slow, so I can't share my screen at the minute for some reason, but I'm sure it'll come round. Can you all still hear me, by the way? Am I still there?
Loud and clear.
That's good. Well, at least the sound part is working. So what I've done is I've ran through that quick start series and recorded my progress all the way through that and edited it out, all of the mistakes that I made when I was doing it, and produced a set of videos that illustrate that. So that very top link that you can see there is my 4-part series to go along with the 4 parts of the quick start that'll allow you to sort of follow along in a more visual manner. And it's great the first part, again, I can't share. My Teams has decided that it won't let me do this, so apologies for that. The first part of the Quickstart series, we deploy Azure IoT operations. And then after that, we use Acri to discover a simulated OPC UA asset. So it spins up a temperature sensor, which is pretty standard for any IoT tutorial that you're going to follow. And then you can discover that using Acri, the discovery service, and then you can ingest that data directly. After that, we then take that data and we're able to then send that to Data Lake in Fabric. And then after that, we can hook up Power BI to that Data Lake, and we can go ahead and create a basic report on that, which is nice. On top of that,
Does it have to be a data lake in Fabric, or could it be any ADSL?
It can be pretty much anything. Only,
okay.
Only, of course, you're going to need to adjust the report to be able to connect to that. But
thank you.
Fabric makes sense just because it's all integrated that way, which is
Absolutely.
Nice.
Thank you.
Onwards from that, then another Avanade. So, in case you didn't know, I'm an Avanade employee, and there's a bunch of us folks doing this sort of stuff over at Avanade. And Christoph Cremon, completely separately to what I was doing here, interestingly, I approached him for some advice on what I was doing, and he showed me a demo, which I would have loved to have shown to you if my Teams was behaving. But you can actually watch his entire talk there at the recording of the recent Knots IoT session. And what he's done here is created a full realization of something which is a lot more practical. Obviously, the getting started is fantastic for exactly what it says on the tin. But his session doesn't really build on top of that, but it takes a lot of the same steps and adds Azure Data Explorer into the mix, as well as then OpenAI. And he's able to have OpenAI create KQL queries across the data and surface them in a chat type interface. So it's well worth having a look through that video and seeing what Christoph has done there. I managed to get it all working on my laptop, and I was really hoping to show you that, but it's sad that I can't. But you can see all of that in his talks. Well worth watching that and seeing what he's done. It's a really great example of how you can show folks the power of IoT operations and how you can ingest data and then actually do something useful with it insights-wise. So, yeah.
Hey, Peter, a suggestion is record yourself doing it and post it in the community.
Yeah, that is a good
I would love
idea.
to see it. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the whole thing in that Knots IoT recording anyway, and Christoph does a better job of it than me. So the whole demo is in there, end to end, with all his talk about IoT operations as well. So go ahead, check that out. That's on YouTube over there. So by all means, I mean, get in touch if you're going through that and there's some stuff you need to know. And what I'm hoping to do, and I've been in conversation with the folks that wrote the Quickstarts, is actually take it some steps further. And allow folks to be able to create some more simulated data, or even better, actually connect real devices somehow to this. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to achieve that, but either way, that's sort of where I'd like to be able to go with this. But yeah, apologies for the screen sharing mishap. Not quite sure what my machine's doing, but hopefully that gives you an idea of what that's all about. So do get in touch if you need me.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. I'm Jalen McGee, and I'm a product manager on the Azure Arc team, and I'm here to talk today about the Azure Arc Gateway, which is a new networking-related feature that we're making available for Azure Arc. What I'll do today is kind of give a conceptual overview, and then I'll give some details about the limited public preview that we just released for this feature. So I wanted to start, for folks who may be unfamiliar, with just a bit of details about the problem that we're solving with the Arc Gateway and that we're addressing. And to start, I wanted to share this kind of table here for Arc-enabled servers. So these are the required endpoints for customers who have enterprise proxies or firewalls. These endpoints must be allowed in those in your proxy or your firewall in order to get started with Arc-enabled servers. And you can see there are about 15 different endpoints here. And one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten is that this list is large for customers who have who really value their security, which all do, and have those proxies and firewalls. Even getting one of these endpoints allowed can take some time for a security team to evaluate and for a networking team to vet and then allow in a proxy or a firewall. So the primary piece of feedback that we've gotten is that one, this list being as long as it is really a challenge. And then two, the fact that there are wildcard endpoints required is also a challenge for customers because convincing your security and networking team to allow a wildcard endpoint can be really challenging. So another kind of thing that I'll point out about this list is this is just for the core Arc-enabled server like onboarding scenario. And as you use more Arc scenarios and extensions, this list grows. So there will be more and more endpoints required as you grow your use of Azure Arc and Azure Arc enabled services. So this is the list for Arc enabled servers, and then this is the list for Arc enabled Kubernetes. It's similar in nature. And we've heard similar feedback about this list. It's too long. There are wildcard endpoints that we can't justify, and we really need to cut that down. So if we go to the next slide here, this kind of summarizes what I just mentioned. If a customer were to use all Arc-enabled scenarios, the list of endpoints required could grow into the 150 plus range. And so that's really a challenge that we've heard from customers and that we really want to address because networking is essentially a prerequisite that you need to satisfy before you can begin even doing a proof of concept. So we want to reduce that operational burden that's there and reduce the number of endpoints that you need to allow to get started. And that's the entire intention behind the Arc Gateway, to reduce the list of URLs that must be opened in proxies and firewalls to use Azure Arc. So if we go to the next slide here, I'm going to be giving just a very 10,000-foot level view of how the Arc Gateway works and kind of what the purpose of it is. So this should actually be titled differently. That's my mistake. But essentially, the Arc Gateway works by introducing two new components. First is the Arc Gateway component in the cloud. So each customer will create an Arc Gateway resource. It's an Azure resource that you will use Azure to create. And this serves as the common front end for all of your infrastructure traffic between Azure and on-prem. And this gateway is served on a specific domain. So once you create your gateway resource, each customer's gateway will have its own gateway URL. And then that gateway URL is one of the few that you then allow in your proxy or firewall. And I have a graphic on the next slide that will go a little bit into more detail, but, oh, and you can go back, sorry about that. I referenced the next one. But so that's the first component, the Arc Gateway in the cloud. And then the second component that's introduced as part of the gateway is called the Azure Arc Proxy. And this is the on-prem component. So this is part of the Arc agent. And this Azure Arc Proxy routes all Arc agency traffic to its destination in Azure via Arc Gateway. So this proxy is part of the core Arc agentry. And like I mentioned, it runs within the context of an Arc-enabled resource. So every Arc-enabled resource gets its own Azure Arc Proxy as part of the Arc agent. The Azure Arc Proxy does not require any configuration on customer's part. It's simply added to the Arc agent. You don't need to manage it. You don't need to do anything extra. Once you onboard a resource to Arc or to Azure, then the Azure Arc Proxy just comes as part of that. Nothing extra is required of you. So now we can go to the next slide. So I have these kind of two graphics that just illustrate how it works. So here on the left is the prior network configuration without Arc Gateway. So you can see we have all the Azure services up in Azure. And then for our customers who have enterprise proxies, all those endpoints that I showed on the first couple slides, those endpoints are required for each of the Azure services. Entra ID has 3 different endpoints. Connect has 2 or so endpoints. Each extension has their own list of endpoints, and then each other Azure service has its own list of endpoints. And as you can see on the left, because you're kind of communicating directly with those endpoints, you need to allow each of those endpoints in your enterprise proxy. And that's really the challenge that our customers are having. And now on the right, you see with the new network configuration with the Arc Gateway in place. So the 2 new components that I mentioned on the previous slide were added. First is the Arc Gateway resource in Azure. So you create that gateway resource, and then you get a URL for that Arc Gateway. It will be xyz.gw.arc.azure.com. So you essentially allow that in your proxy, plus a couple other URLs that will still be required. These will not be wildcard URLs, but it is much fewer than the list required. There's about 7 URLs required in our current state. We want to continue reducing that list. But essentially, you allow that gateway URL in your proxy. And then the Azure Arc proxy, as you can see, is just added to the Arc agent. And then all the agentry traffic will be proxied via the Azure Arc proxy to the Arc Gateway in the cloud. And then the traffic is forwarded to its destination service from there. So that's how we're cutting down on the list of URLs that are required by introducing that kind of intermediary, that Arc Gateway that controls or essentially sends traffic to its relevant destination in Azure. So you can go to the next slide here. So like I mentioned, we have a limited public preview out now for Arc-enabled servers and Azure Stack HCI. This limited public preview is a CLI only experience. So you'll essentially use an Azure CLI to create, you'll use Azure CLI to create your gateway resource. And then from there, you'll get that gateway URL. And then in the documentation, it tells you the additional 5 or 6 URLs that are still required. And it also tells you the scenarios that are covered as part of the Arc Gateway. So essentially, once you create your Arc Gateway resource and you allow the URLs that we require, then you can use any of those scenarios without having to revisit your proxy and allow more URLs. That's, as I mentioned, one of the really key things that we're looking to support with the gateway is make it so you visit your proxy once to configure all the required endpoints for Arc, and then you don't have to visit it again as you continue to adopt more scenarios. That's a really key point that we want to continue to make sure the gateway provides. We have a few scenarios enabled now as part of the limited public preview. Those scenarios are listed in the documentation, but we're going to continue to grow the number of scenarios that are covered by the Arc Gateway. So you essentially configure proxy or firewalls once, and you don't have to touch them again, and you can continue to adopt more and more Arc scenarios. So we have a limited public preview sign-up form that's linked here. Essentially, as part of the sign-up form, you provide the subscriptions that you want the feature enabled on. And then I personally will reach back out to you once we allow those subscriptions within one day or so. And then you'll be able to follow the documentation and move forward with the rest of the steps. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email is linked here. But yeah, thank you for the time.
All right. Thanks so much, Jalen. I believe we do have a question. We can get to a Q&A right after I make this quick announcement. Their next call will be Wednesday on the 7th of August. So please join us for our next call. But Jalen, I think there is a question for you in the Q&A chat.
Oh, okay.
They had said for Azure Stack HCI, it is even larger as we found with the product group. Will the Arc Gateway be part of or usable with Stack HCI?
Absolutely. Yes. And yes, you are correct. Azure Stack HCI does have quite an extensive list. But yes, we're working on a phased approach with Azure Stack HCI. So essentially, the limited public preview, I don't have the exact number of URLs that it covers, but it covers a subset. And then as we grow and go to our official public preview and then GA, the goal for Azure Stack HCI is for it to have only less than 10, between 5 and 10 endpoints required required for all of Azure Stack HCI. We're not there yet, but the documentation that I linked for Azure Stack HCI does have the limited public preview steps, and then it also has the endpoints that it covers and does not cover. So you can feel free to reference that. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I can direct you to the Azure Stack HCI team who is implementing the gateway on their side. So yes, it will absolutely work with Azure Stack HCI, but we're taking a phased approach.
All right. Any other questions from
I see
anyone?
another question actually. Is accurate that the Azure Arc proxy still requires line of sight to the internet? It is, yes, that's correct. Currently, the Azure Arc proxy still requires line of sight to the internet. If a customer does not allow direct internet from a server, then a conventional proxy server is required. Yes, that is correct, John. And we are taking feedback from the limited public preview to figure out which additional scenarios we need to be enabling for the gateway. We have heard from customers that customers who are in locked down environments that have some servers that cannot have internet connectivity and some that can. We don't support that scenario with the gateway in the limited public preview form, but I would definitely love to chat with you, John, to get feedback on your scenario, because as we move forward, that could be one that we prioritize depending on the feedback from the limited public preview. So if you are interested, I would definitely like to follow up with you on that offline and learn more about your scenarios and how we can best support them with the gateway going forward.
I think there was also one other question that was buried. And the question was, can we customize the Arc Gateway URL?
Not at this time, not with the limited public preview. It comes as it comes as one that cannot be customized, but that is another piece of feedback that is awesome to understand, because if I believe we could enable that. The functionality, it's not available now though, and we don't have any commitments on it, but I would love to follow up on that one as well to understand how you would like to customize it for your needs. So the person who asked that question, please feel free to follow up with me as well.
Okay, are there any other questions from anyone about Arc Gateway, about any of the topics that were discussed a little bit earlier in this call? Feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself. We're happy to help out.
Silence.
Anything. It doesn't even have to be about the topics that we had discussed today. If you have any general questions that you have, feel free to unmute yourself and ask here also. It's an open forum for any topics. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll bite on the invite to ask a question. So I'm new to the community. I'm not new to Microsoft. I'm a CSA in the West Midwest, and I have a customer that's a big IoT managed service provider, and they had their own mesh network, and so they never really used our IoT services. But recently, I was asked to put a design architecture proposal together for them to get to some smart city sensors to integrate to them. And I saw the IoT operations documentation very recently. And I'm not seeing the traditional device provisioning server and IoT hub that I remember from years back. And I was just curious, is IoT operations replacing the older stuff, or can I still find the older architecture still? Because I had heard some rumblings that maybe the IoT was shifting roadmaps, or prioritization of our IoT suite in general wasn't as rigorous as it used to be. Can you help me with that?
Is anybody from the team here able to answer? I can answer, but I'm not from the team.
Go for it.
I would love to hear your answer.
So none of those services, IoT Hub and DPS, have gone away or are going away in the near future. But you're right, there's a new path to take, but that path is in public preview and in some cases private preview at the moment. The team are hugely busy creating a whole heap of stuff in the background. And so although announced and ready to use as a development exercise. Unless you're kind of going to work in partnership with Microsoft, it's not quite encouraged to go ahead and stick that in production. Having said that, there are people doing that, but again, they're working quite closely with Microsoft, and Microsoft are actively looking for folks like that. So if you're talking about a big client there, big ISV, then that's probably something that Microsoft would be interested in working with you with. That said, for IoT operations, which is the new path, if you will, it's really based on sort of large scale enterprise IoT. I don't know, infrastructure really at the moment. So tiny devices aren't really directly out of the box supported, but there are mechanisms to allow you to do that. DPS doesn't exist, but hopefully that is coming. There's a bunch of stuff again happening in the background. Again, just to clarify, if you want to do production ready scenarios for what you're talking about, IoT Hub, DPS, IoT Edge, all of those things are still supported and actively contributed to. So probably go down that path immediately. But if you're talking greenfield experimentation stages, then definitely look at IoT operations.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Steve, for the question. Any other questions before we wrap up the call? I know we have 2 minutes left technically, but if there aren't, then we can close out. Last chance for questions, though. Going once, going twice. Alrighty, well, thanks for attending today. As always, you can connect with us in the Azure using the Azure Adaptive Cloud GitHub. Again, it's a public repository, so you should be able to go there now. And if you have any feedback for us, or if you have any topics that you would like to see covered in our future calls, feel free to click that link there and submit some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. But thank you everyone for attending, and I hope to see you next month.